number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 352 of Sports Card Nation podcast and part 2 of our great conversation with Dustin from Sports Card Dad. And hopefully you enjoyed last week's first part. Part 2 continues on this episode. Again, for those that are maybe new, we used to do longer episodes, but now we do our interviews in 2 parts, and to keep them a little bit more consumable. So Dustin returns this week. We chop up some more hobbies. So without further ado, let's get to that. All right, here is part 2 of our conversation with Dustin from Sports Card Dad, and we're going to start off here talking about what he PCs, how he moves cards, and that sort of thing. You talk about buying and selling. Well, we both do that kind of. For those that don't know, like, what do you PC, and how do you sell your cards? Like for me, all the major platforms, your eBays, Comps, even Sport Lots, and obviously I do about 2 shows a month on average, so 24 shows a year. I PC vintage Hall of Fame. I don't want to say vintage, Hall of Fame graded rookies of the 4 sports, and Jackie's sort of my guy. Even modern wise, I'm a big Bobby Wood. So I try to eat, even though I'm heavy vintage, I'm a sports fan. I still watch current sports, so I try to still, collect along those lines. For you, where do you fall in there?
Yeah, so I'm a longtime New Orleans Saints fan. So we're season ticket holders. My wife, when I was dating her, so this is kind of funny. I started dating her in 2009, January. The Saints won the Super Bowl in January 2010. So she our love story is wrapped around the only Saints Super Bowl winning season. And I told her, I'm like, this is probably never going to happen like this again, and so she was like the lucky charm and all that sort of a thing. But we got on the waiting list for season tickets in 2009 during the season, because she's like, oh, there's a waiting list. So we'll get on the waiting list. Well, 2 years ago, we got the call, after Sean Payton and Drew Brees left. So we're literally on the wait list for 15 years. We finally get the call. So we buy tickets and we're season ticket holders. So I'm a huge Drew Brees is the best Saint that ever played. So he's my main PC guy. And then I've got a pretty solid Tom Brady collection as well. But with Tom Brady, you could spend a lot on Tom Brady stuff, but he's kind of more of like my GOAT. I like the football GOAT, so, but I've got, I would say football cards in general are kind of where, if I go back to my hobby roots, 89 Pro Set, trying to find Barry Sanders, Oklahoma State rookies, and Troy Aikman and Deion Sanders. So football cards is really kind of my first love, and basketball with Michael Jordan coming up. I'm a junk wax era kid. So my dad was an officer in the Air Force. I was actually born in Germany. We lived in England for 5 years, and I moved to the U.S. for the first time. I was a U.S. citizen, obviously, because of my dad. But I was 7 years old. We moved to Panama City, Florida. And then that's where I started, there's local card shops and all that. But football, basketball, that's when the Beckett's first came out, was 1990 for both of those. You probably remember all of that. And so that kind of, I'm 8-9 years old. That kind of kick-started everything. You're checking the Beckett. So I fell right in line with that junk wax era. So I've got I've got a Johnny Unitas rookie. I've got Bart Starr rookie. Actually, I've just got it right here on my desk. So I've got a lot of variety. I also have on the non-sports side, I've got, the only Stephen King pack pulled autograph is this.
Wow,
Champions. You can't really see it. I can't get a good lock on it. A big Stranger Things card collector. I've got a bunch of rare Stranger Things cards because it's inexpensive and my whole family watches the show. We got season 5 coming up. But I'm also just like an 80s, 90s nostalgia nerd. So I'm also one of these weirdos that, yes, I have a lot of sports cards. I've got non-sports. I've got a 84 star Jordan PSA 5.5. That's my best card. But I've also got graded comic books. I've got graded action figures. I've got graded I've got graded, original Nintendo games. So there's a lot of 80s, 90s nostalgia collectibles as a whole, not just, I've got a lot of sports cards, but I've got a big mix.
Yeah. It sounds like you stayed kind of true to your roots, kind of what you grew up liking and enjoying, and kind of now still doing it in this fashion, right? And you hear a lot of that, right? I try to do that as much as possible. I've even, on the non-sports side, I've started to pick up cards of my favorite actors and actresses, musicians, and that sort of thing. And the non-sports, as you well know, Dustin, has really made strides in the last few years, and have gotten even more mainstream and more accepted. Not that it needed to be for me. Like if I like it, I just that's fine by me. But even more people have started to dabble in it at least, or go maybe even more than dabbling. So it's fun, and very few things that are not covered on cards. We got pickleball players, we've got bowlers. With all the even just celebrities now appearing, whether it be Ginter or whatever else. It covers so many different things, and it's fun, right? You can buy what you like, and if you don't like it, you don't have to buy it. So I kind of alluded to it early on in the show, like we, like you said, we both have shows that generate some income. For me, that comes through sponsors on my audio side. It comes from downloads on the audio side. I often sometimes get, I don't want to say often, but sometimes I will get criticized, sometimes publicly, sometimes privately. I've noticed you get that too. And I know we talked before we even started recording. For me, like I will never have like a sponsor during the show itself. I will never have a sponsor that it's not something that I don't use already or support or recommend. I don't shill for anything just for the sake of a dollar. And I think it's similar for you. And I think I'm biased, but I think we're unfairly criticized when we do get some of that flack. And, I don't apologize for it. I have no problem explaining kind of my stance on it, just so people are more aware. Kind of I can only speak for myself, obviously, but your take when you face a little bit of that flack or criticism.
Yeah, I mean, I know how much time and effort it takes to make content. And so, anytime I ever see any content creator, whether it's in cards or golf channel or any YouTube, I'm always, if they have a sponsorship, I'm thinking like, good for them. That's always my reaction. And it's just simply because, this isn't rocket science, what we do. It's not like we're solving cancer, but it is work. It's really fun work. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it. You wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't really fun. It's just an extension of our hobby. But, if someone is able to make a few extra bucks, with their channel, and again, as you mentioned earlier, it's just going right back into the hobby. It's going back into cards. It's helping to fund, buys, it's helping to get new camera equipment or whatever it is. So, it's just part of the circle of life, that helps people. It'd almost be like getting, if I was like irritated because someone bought a card for $100 and then sold it for $300 and like, what do you mean you made $200? That's crazy. Why did you do that? That's how they're funding their hobby. That's how our hobby works. That's like our entire hobby is literally buying, selling, trading, buying, grading, selling, like take your pick on whatever that's going to look like. So for me, like, the channels and the proliferation, really the expansion of hobby content, and more channels are now getting sponsorships. It's becoming more normal. I would say though, maybe part of our issue is that if you go back a few years, there was not many channels that had any sort of sponsorship. And so maybe that was kind of new in this space to some degree. As YouTube grew and viewership grew, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just kind of like people weren't used to seeing it. Nowadays, though, there's a lot of channels that have different agreements in place. And like you said, there's some, content creators that decide not to have sponsorships, and that's great. That's on them. If they don't want to do it, then that's perfectly fine. I guess I just don't have like a judgment one way or another. If people decide to do it, great. If they don't, then great. I don't understand, though, getting worked up about it. I do try. People will say like, oh, man, so much of the video is the sponsor talk. And I literally I have it down to about 45 seconds of my video because I'm cognizant of it, to where it's at max, it's about a minute that I'm talking about a sponsor in like a 8 to 12 minute video. So my goal is to try to just kind of get it in there And, most people the majority of people are like, hey, I don't mind it at all. There's just some people that don't, and that's okay.
Yeah, well said, and I agree across the board. Even and I've done things even as the show has grown and increased, and I used to run 3 or 4 like commercials during an episode, Dustin. And now what I do is I run one featured sponsor per episode, and I thank the other, let's say 3 in the intro. Hey, thank all our sponsors. I know Dr. Jim does that on his show, and then run one commercial instead of 3 or 4. And that's kind of taken some of those ads out. Spreaker, which is the platform I'm on for audio, they sort of put their own at the front pre-roll and end roll. And I always tell people, Dustin, I'm sure you've said the same thing, just hit the fast forward 30-second button, and like the minute you hear the promo, if you don't want to hear it, maybe a sponsor won't really want me to say that, but like if you're listening and you don't want to hear that, just hit that third. I've done it while listening to other content myself, so I can't knock someone for doing it too, and that's the option you have. So you can just skip to the part when we're doing the show, we're talking about cards, and no one's worse for the wear. But like you said, it's we're transacting, right? It's a lot of those funds go right back into the hobby, and the hobby is where it is because all of us are transacting. And I think sometimes that criticism comes from whether it be a jealous place or whatnot. I've even had a content creator say, hey, how did he word it to me? He's like, oh, I don't take sponsorship, so my opinion's more pure. And I'm like, well, maybe it is. I can't say it is or it isn't, but mine is just as well. Like SGC is one of the sponsors of the show, and I've been on this very show. When we agreed to that, I said, listen, if I don't agree with something you're doing, I'm going to use tact and be respectful, but I'm going to talk into the mic and say, hey man, I don't like this, or I don't like what's going on right now. And they're like, no, well, by all means, if you keep it respectful and not personal, we can't, we're good with that. And so I've been on this very show and have been critical in a respectful way of SGC. So, that's not shilling. And I wouldn't, if any sponsor said, you can't do that, then our conversation's kind of over in terms of like a working relationship. So,
I've never had that, by the way, too. I'm sure you probably haven't either. I mean, I probably worked with probably a dozen companies, maybe more, and no one has ever said, don't say this or don't say that.
You're right. I more or less, I was just giving a heads up, like this is kind of, totally. They didn't open that conversation. I just said, here's how the show goes. As long as you're comfortable with that, we'll be fine. And they're like, yeah, no problem. Just the only thing they said is what I already said. Like, I'll be tactful and respectful. It's not going to be personal. You know what I mean? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. And they've been on the program. Peter Steinberg's been on the program numerous times. I've asked them tough questions and that. So that's and I think that's so when that person said, well, I'm more pure, I point to that, like, hey, and they're a listener to the show, and like, didn't you hear me be critical of SGC? Well, they're a sponsor. So I don't know if you're more pure or we're tied or whatever, but like, that's like you said, that's a personal choice on their content side that they're not going to take any spot. And that's
so the fallacy there though is that it's making the case that if you're not sponsored, then you're not biased, which is not true. So the way that I've always, I was with SGC for 2 years. They sponsored the channel, and now I'm a PSA partner, and both companies have been great. I know they're under the same, umbrella now, but the way that I always manage grading is, first off, I'm a huge believer in third-party grading authentication, because you and I we were there in the late 80s, 90s when there was no grading, and it was a free-for-all. It was real. People are like, oh, it's the Wild West now. No. It was the Wild West in 1990. That's when it was the Wild West. We had that autograph, that the guy coming out with the autograph stuff. We won't go into all that now, but like that was the norm in 1990. It was like handwritten COAs. I remember at the mall, like it was like a disaster, back then. So I'm and the way that I kind of navigate grading partners is I think we have 4 very strong companies in the space. We do. We have 4 great grading companies. So even though I might be partnered with SGC or it might be PSA, if you decide to go to CGC, that's great. Or if you decide to go to Beckett for certain cards, that's great. We have 4 great companies. In 1990, we had 0 great company. We had nothing, So, yes, there's mistakes made, whatever. But we're in such a great spot with third-party grading authentication now. And that's how, so yes, I might have a bias towards PSA or I might have a bias towards SGC, but I'm a believer as a whole in third-party grading. And just because someone is not sponsored by any of those grading companies, they still have their own biases. They still have their own grading biases. They grade with whoever they grade with, and they're still going to give an opinion. So I never understood that argument.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And they might not be getting financially compensated, but they're, anytime you do content, you're giving your opinion, unless you're really vanilla and you literally drive down the middle of the road and either way. So we're all giving our opinions. It's just sometimes we're compensated or not, but neither one makes us more or less, honest. It's just how we feel, right? Like I've been critical of SG even as they sponsor the program, and I was up front right from day one with them, and I've never had an issue. And it's, I don't know how many years now it's before. So but you're right. Whether someone's has a sponsor or not, they're still giving. I don't use this so-and-so company, and I use this 100%. And like you said, I agree. There's 4 companies. So I use, full transparency myself. I use SGC and PSA. I used to use Beckett back in the heyday. They kind of, for me, have kind of fallen off that pedestal. Can they come back? I'm not rooting against them, Dustin, but, they're just not an option for me now. But if you look at my show inventory, I'm sure there's a couple Beckett slabs in the inventory there. And same thing with CGC. And I'll buy cards that are in those slabs. I'm not while I may not send, again, it's buy the card, right? Not the slab or the slab company, right? If I want to buy a card and it's a good deal, it could be in a Beckett slab. It could be in I have a lot of CG cards. So, while I may not send to all 4, I have all 4 of those represented in my invoice. So like you said, to me, they're the 4 major players. Whatever way you rank them in your own mind, that's up to you. But, I think that's where we are. And I think it's going to be hard to crack into that top 4 if you're on the outside looking in, because there's a lot of history there.
You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
We are back.
Everyone even thinks CGC's new. They're not. They've been around a while, but they've really gotten more so into the card aspect in the last couple years. So to be in that top 4, you got to sort of have some track record, and I think those 4, as you pointed out, check those boxes. So, but again, right, to each their own. Some people. I used to use top loaders to put my card. Now I'm a semi-rigid guy. Someday maybe I switch back, and so you can always pivot and change your opinion as need be, or if something happened. And that's the beauty of the hobby. I always tell people, right? You're the CEO of your own hobby company, and how you collect, what you buy. You don't have to go to a board of directors and approve. Maybe your wife if you're married, but that's why I have that separate account. So I don't even she's not on my board of hobby directors, Dustin. But I say that in a not mean spirited way, but a funny way. So we're all kind of, we're in control over how we want to hobby, and that's the fun part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny too, because we've had these conversations, what cards we're buying and that sort of a thing. And she's kind of more along the line of, hey, look, like you've got your, like the channel money, it buys the cards, buys the collectibles, but there's always thought around, yes, like, cause I get a lot of joy out of low end. We talked about 89 Pro Set Barry Sanders stuff. You can get those for a few bucks. So her take is more of, make sure it's a strong store of value if you're going to put some significant money into it. So like cards I'm targeting today's video, I know this will come out later on, but going back a couple of weeks when this going, Back to the Future or whatever, the video I made today was 3 cards I'm targeting at the National. They're all vintage baseball cards because I have no vintage baseball cards in my collection. So, I'm trying to just balance things out a little bit to where I feel good. Like it's awesome stuff that I love, but also what I feel is a pretty strong store of value, so that's really kind of where I like everyone's happy.
Yeah. And it makes sense. If you're going to spend a significant amount of money on a card, it makes sense to purchase a card that, if and when the time comes and like you have to like sell it or move on from it, like you don't want to necessarily lose. Now we don't control that, but
Sure.
with some research and using our heads and experience, right? We didn't just get into hobby yesterday. We can make some smart buying choices. My approach, and I usually do, and I didn't this year. I might do it kind of after, or just I'll kind of preload it. But I always go in with a list of 5 cards that I'd like to get, knowing I'm not, number one, I couldn't afford all 5 even if I wanted to. But like I always try to get 2 of the 5. Not sure in which 2 for sure. 2 of the 5, but I don't want to go in with just 2, because if you miss out on one, you almost feel like it's not a failure, but you sort of feel you're setting yourself up for a little disappointment. So I go in with a target list of 5, with hoping to check 2 of those. A great show would be 3. 2 is what you're hoping for. 1 is like, what happened? Did I not do due
Well,
diligence?
and
Or what have you?
the problem with vintage baseball is, so I made this video today and my comment section is now full of like, oh, well, think about this one, think about that one. And that's the problem with vintage baseball cards, is it's like this endless rabbit hole. And that's part of the reason why I've kind of avoided it a little bit, because I'm like, damn it, I'm gonna end up spending like my entire collection will end up being like vintage baseball, because once you kind of get into it, then and I don't want to be the guy that's necessarily just buying like all Hall of Famers or something. I want to be kind of more of a player collector. I'm really focused on Willie Mays, Barry Bonds, and what was the other one that the other player? I'm just drawing a blank on the Red Sox, the hitter. I'm drawing a blank on.
You're talking on the vintage side?
Yeah, pre-war. I'm like,
Ted Williams?
Ted Williams, and then Roberto Clemente. So like those are like the 4 guys, and then but like Jackie Robinson. If there's a great Jackie Robinson card, like that would be tough to pay. Like if the price is right, if it's like a great looking copy. That's the problem for me with vintage baseball, is it could just turn into like, that's my whole focus, for a while, which is good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And we both know, and people out there listening know as well, Dustin too, there are certain players, right, that are just known for holding their value, if not increasing, where like, yeah, it's going to cost me a little bit here, but like, down the line, I'm not going to have trouble. If I have to get out of the card, if that day comes, I'll be okay. Jackie Leaf rookie, when I explained that to my wife, that checks that sort of buys. And that's my point. That's not the only card. There are a lot of cards that fit that description and bill. So that's important to note, and making those smarter purchases, right? That like, yeah, it's just money in a different form whenever. It's like putting it in the bank, but instead of sitting in the vault, it's sitting on your desk or wherever you store your cards, or maybe it is in the bank in the safety deposit box potentially, but it's just in a different form. And I think sometimes we forget about that or lose sight of that. And we're recording this before the National, so I kind of go in with 5, hoping to get 2. 3 would be like a real success. 2 is kind of the goal, and if I get 1, something happened, I did something wrong, or just a tough show. But even then, right, it's not even just the cards, right? It's talking. I'm looking forward to seeing you there and shaking your hand. It's the events after the show.
Yep.
I'm going to a White Sox Phillies game. I got a couple dinners, the PSA registry bar. It's more than the cards. Like the cards is the common thread, but it's everything. I could probably. I know a guy, won't mention his name. He said he spent his card budget even before the National. He's still going to the National with that budget just to see everybody, have dinners, enjoy the camaraderie and that sort of thing. So the cards is a big part of the story, but it's not the only part of the story. And so whether I get 1 card, 0 cards, 2, 3, it's still going to be a fun 5 days. I know you'll probably feel the same way, and looking forward to seeing you here. A little over a week. So when we're recording this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun. And that is kind of the fun of it. Every year there will be new, whether it be viewers or content creators that I've connected with. Cause I feel like I've known you for a long time, but I've never met you because I've been watching you for obviously for years. But every year there's always like people like that where it's like, oh yeah, and you're able to connect, and that's a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah. And it's funny because, someone will say, and I've seen you, and I'm like, I don't want to bug them. Like the times I've seen you, like you're looking at something or talking, and I'm like, I'll catch him when he's not in like mid conversation. I don't want to interrupt the potential transaction. Then I don't see again. But I'll make a point for sure this year to, even if it's interrupting the transaction, maybe I'll talk you into buying something.
Yeah.
Talked about earlier in the show. But I've had people say, "Oh, I saw you, man. I didn't want to bug you," and I'm like, "No, I'm a talkative guy. Like, don't. Sometimes I got to be careful because you get in all these conversations and it's like 3 or 4 hours. And like, I haven't even looked at any cards yet or any tables yet. You sort of got to balance that time out. So, but I always tell people I'm very approachable. Don't hesitate. That's like the tagline of the show, right? The hobby is to people. The cards are obviously the common thread, why we're passionate about, but it's the people and the stories, that go along with it that make up the hobby and why it's so enjoyable, right? We could sit at home behind a computer and never leave the house and buy cards. And that might be a little fun. I'm not going to, we do that. But the fun is going out there and having conversations, sharing, what we pick up. And not even just about cards, but life and just having those great conversations. So that's at least how I look at it. So.
I think too, it's an interesting dynamic because really, if we're talking about collecting cards and looking at cards, whether it's in binders or top loaders or graded cards or whatever, usually you're kind of isolated when you're doing that. You're doing that by yourself at your house. So when you go to a card show or you go to the National, it's it's a unique experience in that you're around another 5,000 people or 100,000 people that are doing kind of that same isolated event that you do at home. And it's like, it's having, all those like-minded people together and from all different backgrounds. And, that's a really, I think that's what kind of ties it all together is that part of it, because then you're, because I don't know how the best way to explain it. It's almost kind of like an introverted hobby in a way, and then
it's almost, I'll say this. I just wrote an article, Dustin. It's almost, and not to make it, it's almost religious, right? We go, like if you're of certain belief, you go to church with people who believe the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of that, you even talked about it earlier. Like, it's not Mecca, but it's the hobby Mecca, right? It's the 1 week every year we circle on a calendar. You're not going to get more hobbyists in one building at the same time. I don't care what other show. This is the show. You call it the greatest show on turf. I agree. It's the greatest card show every year, regardless of what city. Chicago, Atlantic City, Cleveland, Detroit in 3 years, Atlanta in 3 years, whatever it may be. we look forward to every year. We make plans. It's even more than the cards, right? It's the stuff that happens once the show doors close. It's even before the show, it's all that. You're not going to get that many like-minded people in one place, hobby-wise anyway, at one time. And so not to like compare it to religion, but it has some parallels.
Sure.
There, almost like a pilgrimage, right? Every year we're pilgrimaging to, insert city here. For us, it's going to be Chicago this year and the next two, and we'll see after that. But you mentioned Mecca, and I wrote an article where I mentioned like Mecca and Jerusalem, and not to bring really, but it has the hobby equivalent to those kind of places.
Yeah, it's really that serious, and people, outsiders, probably think you guys are nuts, but it is that serious, though. I mean, it's a weird bond that we all have.
Yeah, but it's fun, and that's why we do it, and that's what it's about. And listen, I'm glad you came on. Probably should have had you on, frankly, sooner. That's on me. I apologize, and we'll have you on again. There were some things I had bullet points that we didn't even get to tackle tonight, so we'll save them for hopefully
let's do it again.
Another appearance. And I look forward. I know this will air again with the show be over and done, but look forward to seeing you here in a little over a week as well.
Same to you, John. I'm excited.
Yeah, and as always, listen. Last word. Share anything, your socials, where people can get your content, YouTube channel. Take your time, get all that stuff out there.
I don't have a lot. I mean, I would say kind of my channel, or kind of the platform of choice for me is always been YouTube. It's the Sports Card Dad, and then I'm on Twitter X as the Sports Card Dad, and then also on IG at Sports Card Dad. But YouTube is really kind of where I live mostly. And that's really, I would say, probably the best way to find me in the comment section, or you can email me. In the video description, I've got my email address if you want to reach out in my videos. I'm available.
All right, there you go. Dustin, thanks again. As always, had a blast. Time flew right by, so we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, man. All right, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Take care. All right, awesome having Dustin on the program. That was part 2. If you missed part 1, just go back a week. It's right there. Take this moment to, besides thanking Dustin, next week we have Brett McGrath from Stacking Slabs. Will be our distinguished guest on Sports Card Nation. I forgot to thank the sponsors in the intro, so I'll take that moment now to do that. Iron Sports Cards, SCD, Sports Collectors Digest, who I'm privileged to write for. Hobby Hotline, as we make the move, or made the move, to For Collectors and Upper Deck. So thanks to all those entities for making this show possible, and appreciate it. So we're going to have our Hobby is the People announcer of the week and wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Hello, this is Mark Hoyle, and remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.